How did I get started? I was in those 20s years after college when it's like, well, what are we going to do now? And I was in limbo looking at maybe going back to graduate school. I wasn't sure what in, but that seemed like the next course. And I went and visited my parents. And my parents were living in Northern California. At that time, I was in Southern California. And my parents were using some environmentally friendly cleaning products, which at that time was like totally unheard of. The terms environmental and biodegradable and ecology, those weren't even in the dictionary. And my mom was using these products that were concentrated, and she said, now don't use too much. They're concentrated and they don't pollute. Well, that got my attention. The don't pollute got my attention because one of the things that I'd done after college was I had been with the Peace Corps and I had lived in the South Pacific in Polynesian Islands in the Kingdom of Tonga, which was completely unpolluted. And then over the years ended up back in Southern California with air quality alerts, and no one drank water out of the tap because it didn't taste good. So they had their water delivered in 5-gallon jugs. And when I heard something doesn't pollute, I said, well, I'll buy some of that. Where do you get it? And she said, I don't know. I think it's one of those door-to-door businesses, which of course brought up for me all kinds of images of someone who couldn't make a living or whatever. But I pursued it enough to get back to Southern California and try to find someone to sell the products to me. And fortunately, I was led to my longtime mentor family, both of whom were stockbrokers. They lived in the Beverly Hills, and their oldest son had just left for Harvard Law School. Well, that didn't fit in the profile of my imagination of someone who was selling something door to door. And so fortunately, I was introduced to the whole philosophy of the Shaklee Company that we now work with. I was introduced to the nutritional products, which were not of interest to me because I was in my 20s and bulletproof. But I pursued it and tried, and of course got results. For me, my results were I lost my cravings for carbs, and it was easier to get up in the morning. And I didn't have that kind of sinker in the middle of the day. So I was encouraged and impressed with the products, but I wasn't looking for a business until my mentors, Mary and Gary Loomis, took me to an event. And at that event, the speaker talked about the business, and I had no business background. He talked about the business, and when he told how much he was making in the business, I listened to that and I thought, this guy is not particularly impressive. I was not impressed by the presentation, but when I found out how much he was making, I thought, if that guy can do that, I ought to be able to do half that, because he was making twice as much as I had made when I worked in Washington, D.C. on the staff of a United States congressman. And this guy was not that impressive. And I thought, well, okay, I'll play with this. I'll see if I can make a little bit while I decide what else I'm going to do. Well, that's the long or the short story of how I got started. So what did I do? I had no business background. I wasn't interested in, quote, sales. But what I did was I went back to some of my Peace Corps friends, and they were in the same situation I was. We'd lived in wonderful places. We'd had very challenging and interesting experiences. And now we're back going, okay, maybe I go to graduate school, but I got to get a real job, because it's like families and mortgages come along, and it's like, what am I going to do next? So that's where I started. And they were scattered all over the country. And we just ended up starting with, hey, maybe we can make something out of this. We can serve people. Obviously, there are some benefits to the products. We were very impressed by the philosophy. We got product results. And that's how we really got started. That's how the business happened. And oh my gosh, started with no money, making long distance phone calls across the country to friends, going and visiting them, staying on their couch because nobody had any money. But we had a dream and we had the passion that I think what really got me in the business as much as anything was not so much what I wanted to do, although that grew, but what I didn't want to do. I knew what I did not want to do was go and work 9 to 5, 8 to 6, 8 to 7 job, commute in traffic, be tied up 5, 6, 7 days a week, be told what time I had to show up, know that I had to work the day after Christmas. That just did not inspire me. So being given an option of actually being an entrepreneur, having my own business and managing my own time, I don't mind working hard, but I like to not be told exactly what time I have to do it. So give us a job to do, let us produce it, but don't tell us that we can't work, we can't go out in the middle of the day and spend time on the water or do things that we love. So that's really the how I got into business.